Welcome back, baseball fans. 1972-75 carryover league all-season look. Tonight again, we're looking at some data on the Tuesday night series. We're looking at 384 carry-on players carrying on from a year ago. 12 of the 20 players on the teams just moved forward in the year with their present card. And then the analysis here is to see if any of the dozen could get better in the draft. We left off with the Dodgers, and this process here, improving a player means that you would forfeit that pick in the draft where you do this improvement. And let's say you improve one guy in your 12. At the end of the 8-round draft, you'd have 19 players. Then you have to sign your 20th guy off the street. So the idea is you improve one of your dozen players, and then you don't care too much about who player number 20 is. He could be a backup catcher, utility infielder, corner outfielder, swingman, long reliever, something like that. That's not that important. Just so that you can get one of your dozen players playing in a much better card. And this happens between, I don't know, half dozen more times. Happened a lot last year, I think. We had like 12 to 15 guys like this improve. One thing it does is if you're stuck in the draft and you don't like the year of what's available, then you just simply make a move of improving one of your players to that year you don't like, and then whatever year gets vacated, you might like more talent in whichever of the 4 years that is. That's another strategy to use. Also, really bad expansion teams who often don't have a rookie farm system that's fertile will simply keep improving their internal guys until they get, until their internal guys have the best cards they ever produced. They can get to that card if they wait, but if you're impatient because you're bad and you want to get to those cards sooner, it's worth it. It's worth being competitive now and signing guys off the street as free agents anyway. So we have gone through half the league. We've gone alphabetically through 16 teams, beginning with Arizona through the Dodgers. And we're going to pick it up tonight with an expansion team, Las Vegas. And I've already done the analysis of guys I think might be a nice improvement. So here you see is a list of your dozen guys. And the first 6, and you see here, this code means the year of 72 and player 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So again, you got 6 guys in year 1, 4 guys in year 2, 2 guys in year 3, and you'll have 2 rookies in year 4. That's the format of our league, and we draft 2 guys from each of the years. So you end up with 8, 6, 4, 2 to get to 20. So this is where I input any information that's pertinent. Obviously, if 72 here, so this is blank because that's the year they are. That's blank because that's the year they are. That's blank because that's the year they are. So these are all the players here, and I've done an analysis of this team, and I've really found that Las Vegas has done a great job of getting these players into their most successful card, and if it's not their most successful card, it's pretty darn close. So that's pretty efficient. One player who could get better is Juan Beniquez. So let's take a look at him and see if this is worth making this guy better in the draft. So Beniquez begins with a 3 E10 in center field, 267 hitter, 670 OPS. And what we're saying in here is 75 he improves. So in 75, Beniquez is virtually the same defensively, but he can also play some third base. But now he's a 291 hitter, 358 on base, 402 slugging, 760 OPS. So he raises the OPS by 90 points. Now that is not glamorous, but it's a nice improvement, and would probably be a full-time gig in the outfield. You have Ken Berry already playing center field. Mike Anderson can play right field. You lost a left fielder through retirement, Jim Nettles. So yeah, that could help a young expansion team getting Juan Beniquez into a better card in 75. again, it could very well be they do this if they look into the 1975 crop of rookies, which we can do in another another one of these spreadsheet analysis. We'll look at rookies and so forth much later on. If they don't have anybody good in 75, and remember, the 75 or the rookie class, you're only getting players that other organizations didn't really want. So there's a reasonable chance that Benitez might be better than whatever your 75 rookie class looks like for Las Vegas. So let's move on now to Milwaukee. And in the case of Milwaukee, we found a couple guys that we think get better. Now, what we have done is we've moved Ben Oglivie to Milwaukee much sooner than he arrived. He had a stint with the Red Sox, had a stint with the Tigers. We got him there much earlier. We do it with some players when we know they're most noteworthy with a specific team. In this case, it would be Oglivie with the Brewers by the late part of the decade when he hits 40 home runs in 1980, 79, 80, 82, Oglivie. They also think that Ollie Brown, who they got in an off-season trade with the Padres, who they traded the third baseman Ken McMullen to the Padres for Ollie Brown. They think he gets better in 75. It's interesting because Ollie Brown moved through Milwaukee and through Philadelphia and San Diego in this decade. So let's take a look at Oglivie and Ollie Brown from Milwaukee and see what this means. So Oglivie's in a 72 card, and it's not very good. He's a 485, 241, 684 OPS. It's pretty bad. Probably wouldn't even be selective if it wasn't for name recognition. So what happens in 75 that makes him statistically better? All right, well, his defense isn't any good either, but he's now a 286 hitter, 416, 735. So the batting average goes up 40 points, and the power is pretty much the same. OPS goes up 60 points. To me, that's not a big deal. If his defense got a lot better, if we had a ton more homers, So this is a case of saying, well, if the Brewers get stuck, maybe without finding anybody in 75, let's improve Oglivie. Now let's take a look at the case of Ollie Brown. Ollie's a 3E2 with a 72 card, 279, 716 OPS. That seems pretty reasonable. But we're saying that Ollie Brown in 75 is now a 303 hitter. 369 on base, 510 slugging, 879. So he goes from a 716 to an 879 OPS, an increase of 160 points in OPS without losing any defense. And that's pretty, that would be a good right fielder to give you the everyday job. A little bit later in this decade, they'll have Sixto Lezcano they can put out in right field with plenty of power. And Gorman Thomas, and until those guys are ready, and they're probably not ready yet, Ollie Brown makes a lot more sense than Oglivie. If they want to do that and only bring up one guy in 75. One rookie in 75. They have a nice deep farm system in the middle 70s. And by the end of this decade, Milwaukee they'll be crushing it. One of the best offenses in all of baseball. All right, let's move on next to the Twins. Interesting team. We've complained that they've held on to that older team of the 60s with Oliva and Killebrew all through the early part as they get older, and they haven't produced. And we're wondering, are they going to replenish their stock? And actually they do. They do have a nice little farm system. And they have three guys who have really good 1975s. A catcher, Phil Roof, a pitcher, Dave Goltz, and an outfielder, Larry Heisel. So that's great. It all happens in 75. Let's go take a look at those guys. So Roof has an outlier card. He's got a 205 card now, but it's heavily weighed at hitting left-handed pitching. But the 75 Roof card is a little bit of a statistical anomaly here. Let's go look at that. You'd love to see these if if they're on your team, and and your opponents hate this sort of thing. But Phil Roof hits 302, 353, 484, 837, and crushes homers against right-handed pitching. Homers on 1, 5, 6, and 7. Has a nice batting average against lefties with not as much power. But this is one of those cards that only has 126 at-bats that sometimes Strat-O-Matic will put in the fine print saying, please don't overuse this player, Phil Roof. Please don't use Dave Rader. Please don't use, like, a bunch of cards like that. Don't use this guy too much. It might alter the overall performance of the team. And I say foo on that. I love to see these cool looking cards. So Roof's got a really good 75 card. Dave Goltz's 75 is nice. He'll have a nice little spell here moving forward, 75 to 79. 75 is the first year he can pitch on 3 days rest, but really, it's a 126 whip. You could say it's kind of a sideways move from where he is presently, but he can't pitch on 3 days rest presently, so that's why you would do that. Do you need Goltz to pitch on 3 days rest? You've got Blyleven who can pitch on 3 days rest, Jim Cott who cannot, and you lost your number 4 starter in the offseason. So you could have Blyleven Goltz pitching on 3 days rest with 2 other starters if you'd like to do that. And then you have Larry Heisel. Now Heisel's got a nice card presently. He was with the Phillies, then he disappeared into the minor leagues for a while, then he reemerged in 73 with a nice little card, 272, 351, 422, 773. But in 75 it gets even better than that for Larry. He's hitting 314, 376, 494, 870. So anytime you see the OPS jump 100 or more points, you got to be happy with that. And defensively, he improves from a 3+4 to a 2+2. 75, eventually he has a good year with the Brewers as well. I think the Twins should probably hold on to him as long as possible. Don't let him go to the Brewers if you can avoid it, because they're a division rival. They wouldn't have been a division rival in traditional MLB. Brewers used to be the American League East, Twins the American League West. Through realignment, we have these two teams in the same division. So you don't really want to let your Twin players go to the Brewers if you know, not a smart thing to do. So Heisel, frankly, assuming their farm system can skip a year, Heisel and Roof could really give this offense a nice jolt. I wouldn't be too concerned with Dave Goltz. Let him pitch on 4 days rest. So, next up, the Mets. A couple guys, and an older guy, Wayne Garrett, who, in 75, how old is Wayne in 75? He's only 27. I guess he was very young when he broke into the majors. Could play second and third. Then could just play third, and then he couldn't play third very well. And then suddenly he starts fielding better again. So Garrett, we have him as a 4E31 third baseman, but he's got a 751 OPS and he can hit lefties. In 75, Wayne's defense improves back to a 317, a 266 hitter, and a 762 OPS. So it's a defensive improvement, and the batting average goes up a few points. Offensively, he's a little bit better, and defensively, he's a lot better. Very subtle. And again, if the Mets have a very deep rookie class in 75, you don't want to waste that position or that year on improving Wayne. Leave him alone. In this era, we don't have Felix Mian playing second base for them. We've been out in the desert looking for a second baseman. We had Ted Martinez 2 years ago. We had Lee Lacy last year and Gil Garrido last year. The good news is that maybe they can rethink Lee Lacy now. Lee Lacy, by the way, if they can hold on to him, he'll have a pretty productive career later on with the Pirates, and had a nice kind of extra player career with the Dodgers. 75, Lacy is actually very good. They need him to play second base. And by the way, the Dodgers had Davey Lopes at second base, so Lacy had to move to the outfield, and they moved him all over the place. 75 Lacey, he can't field. He's a 40-16, 40-41. But he can hit. 314, 356, 451, 807. If you're comfortable with the bad defense at second base and with this guy, Gil Garrido, he's a 3E8 second baseman backing him up. Problem is, Gil Garrido also backs up Wayne Garrett at third. So you'd have one really lousy infielder at all times with Harrelson and Garrido, either Garrett or Lacey if you did that. But if the Mets, want to get serious with this offense and start generating more runs, Lacey would certainly help. All right, next up, let's take a look at the Yankees. And actually, this is the first of the teams where I looked through this and I found a lot of similar, but nothing significant improving. I know Fred Bean's in his best card. Chambliss is very consistent, so you're not going to see 1 year boom. He's going to hit close to 20 homers, but probably less, like 17 homers. Like a 277, 285 hitter. He's a 3 first baseman every year. Eventually he'll be a 2. But he's steady, is one of the best compliments you can give a player like that. Steady year in and year out. Not really worth improving upon. Sparky Lyle, this is tricky because he's already fantastic. And he was the fireman of the year in the American League. And yeah, he does actually technically get better in 74. He's got 102 and 119 whips and a 166 ERA coming up. But it would be hard for me to toss a card away that just won the fireman of the year. And that card I'm talking about is the first year he left Boston to go to New York in 72. 9-5, 192 ERA, 105 whip. So why would I want to get rid of that card? Elliot Maddox has his present, the best card of his career, 74, where he got MVP votes. Doc Minich is about the same. And Thurman Munson has arguably his best non-MVP year, which is 73. When the 73 season is over, they could just move him into his MVP card of 1976. Let's keep going here. Oakland. Now, the Dynasty A's, if you've been watching this channel enough, you know how I've talked about how they've been in the Dynasty era for 3 years already. Haven't gotten a World Series ring yet. Now the Dynasty starts because we get into 72, 73, 74. And Holtzman, Rudy, Hunter, Bando, Tennis, Reggie, Fingers, Campaneris, they're all in their best years. That's how this worked out. That's how they were built. So there's no improvement on the classic Oakland A's. The only A who could get a little bit better is Claudell Washington, who was a rookie in 74 for them. Forced into playing center field because Bill North was stolen from their farm system by the Seattle Mariners. So Claudell in 74, 285, 702 OPS. So in 75, he gets a little bit better. He's up to 308, 769 OPS, and he steals bases. He steals 40 bases. So you can now put him in a leadoff spot, which you didn't do a year ago. So you could have Claudell Washington and Campaneris batting first and second. This is a possible reality that the rest of the American League is going to groan about if Claudell is a catalyst for Oakland. And the only thing the American League can do is be glad his terrible defense is in center field. Claudell's a 487 in center field, and Oakland has no solution to that. Waste a roster spot for a defensive replacement. Theoretically, they have Rudy and Reggie who don't need defensive help. So you could simply draft. This is a case where if you improve Claudell here and you have 19 men on your roster, you simply go on the street and look at whatever year the best defensive outfielder, even if he hits 150, just take him. Just to bring, if he's a 2 in center field, you take him. And you bring him in the late innings for Claudell Washington. And the rest of the American League would hate that. Next up, the expansion Ohio players who have already made a splash, they have the first pick in the draft, and so they've made a deal to get Vita Blue away from the A's because he'll have a longer career, but they did forfeit Al Downing and Don Wilson in that deal, and those two guys, their golden years are between 72 and 74 for the A's, so it looks like 75 would probably be the year they take for Blue, so he gets a 4-year contract. But they also got Lynn McLaughlin in that deal, and this is a sleeper pick here, Lynn McLaughlin, because he actually started with the Red Sox. But Lynn McLaughlin has a really nice 74, pitching on 3 days rest with the Cardinals and a 2.69 ERA and a 1.26 WHIP. So they actually could make that trade look even better by getting Blue and McLaughlin to pitch on 3 days rest, doing the same thing that Al Downing and Don Wilson pitching on 3 days rest will do with Oakland. So that trade the Oakland A's made could very well backfire. Daryl Thomas gets better in 75, but he had to. He had a very disappointing card to play shortstop for this team when they could not find another shortstop anywhere in the draft. So he's a 230 hitter. So we knew he was going to get better. Daryl Thomas becomes a fine utility player for the Dodgers. He can play, I think, every position except first base maybe. In 75, he hits 276, 728 OPS. So he's got the bat. His position is now second base, though. So that creates a problem because you got Dave Cash playing second base. So you have 2 second basemen, you don't really have a good shortstop. Boy, if you can just get out of the Daryl Thomas card altogether and go find a shortstop, you probably should. They have Larry Lintz who could play shortstop. Maybe that's the solution. But he can't play defense. So, not a good fit for Ohio, and generally your expansion teams, you really hoped there was more improvement. The good news is that Tom Hall, Wayne Simpson, Rudy May, Gene Kleins, they're all in their best cards. Jesse Jefferson, Bill Robinson, all these guys, they're in their best cards, so, they should be glad that they're at least that good. We're going to call it after the Phillies here, the final team, who went to the League Championship Series, exceeded expectations, got to that playoff level. Phillies did it much sooner. They did it in the 71 to 74 timeline when not much was expected of them. By getting Mike Schmidt and getting Gary Maddox, really helped send this team over the top. They can improve some guys. We'll start with Tony Taylor. And this improvement really is only one way, on one side. So Taylor he went to the All-Star game a year ago as the utility player for the National League. At 303, all the infield positions including first, second, third, not short. They have Boa to play short. Terry Arms on this team. But in 74, Tony Taylor has a nice 74. He hits 328, 389, 873 OPS. Unfortunately, though, it's on one side. It's all against left-handed pitching. And anytime I see that, I kind of have to, you appreciate the 328 batting average, but the reality is that you're not going to be able to utilize it a ton. And I'd rather have Tony Taylor as a 300 hitter who could hit lefties and righties. So I don't really know if that's a step forward for him. Luzinski. Now this is interesting. We have Luzinski's 72 card, which is his first full-time season at left field. 611 plate appearances. 281, 453 slugging, a 785 OPS. But if you bump him up to 75, Luzinski, well, one thing, his defense, no, he doesn't get better. His defense, he's a 3 in 73, but his bat doesn't get much better. 75, though, he's still a 4 in the outfield, but he's a 300, 394, 540, 934 OPS because he gets 34 bombs. So yeah, that's a lot of power there. He had power, but he has much more now. He goes from 785 to 934 OPS. And his defense will always be what that is in this decade anyway, so I wouldn't cherry pick a defensive year for Luzinski. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I cherry pick the power, and that's it. 75. He'll have more power in like 77, I think, 78. But anyway, that'd be a great card for the Phillies to do. And the last guy here we have, and this is kind of nice, Denny Doyle. By 75, he was out of Philadelphia. He was out of California, I think. He was with the Red Sox, and he went to the World Series with the Red Sox. Didn't stay there very long. Hit .298 with the Red Sox in 75. He's still a .222 second baseman. 742 OPS. But we have his 74 card where he's a .260 hitter. So, justifying the improvement of a non-power hitter, you know, unless it goes up 100 points, it's probably not worth it, particularly the on base. Let's just look at on base only. So he's a .295 on base, and he goes to a .329 on base. So that's batting average plus walks. That's only 35 point improvement. Actually, he probably walked a little bit less. He also hits left-handed pitching okay in 74, so this might not be really worth an improvement. The only statistic he gets better in this batting average, and he's with Boston anyway, so I don't know if they'd really want to do that. Luzinski, of these three, Luzinski, yeah, I could see the Phillies coming off a league championship series and wanting their basher to get better. Plus, they lost Darren Johnson, who was their big home run hitter a year ago. So I think getting Luzinski from hitting 18 homers to hitting 34 homers, that might pay off pretty well and keep them from, at least keep them on that plane that they're on. We don't want to see this team regress as if this last season was a fluke and they're going to go downhill. We want to see them challenge for that division again. And we figure the Mets are still going to be around. The Braves are still going to be around in the East. So that's going to be a dogfight. So Philly's got their work cut out for them to stay where they're at and to get back to the playoffs again. So that's it for the analysis. We're going to stop here. We have looked at 24 of the 32 teams, carry-on players, improvements. We'll finish this analysis next week of carry-ons, and then we'll look at keepers, ways, retires, and we'll kind of keep the analysis going on Tuesdays as we get into the winter months before the draft. Thanks for checking this out. We'll see you next time.